The rain hammered against the windows of Morrison and Associates legal firm as Kathleen Martinez clutched her worn portfolio bag and tried to make sense of what the silver-haired lawyer had just told her. Her grandmother, the woman who had raised her after her parents died, had left her everything. But there was a catch that sounded like something from a Victorian novel. "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?" Catley asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Morrison adjusted his glasses and looked at her with sympathy mixed with professional detachment. "Your grandmother's will states that you will inherit her entire estate. It's valued at approximately $3 million, only if you marry Judge Adrian Blackwell within 60 days of her passing. If you refuse or fail to meet this deadline, the estate will be donated to various charities." Catley's hands trembled. $3 million would change her life completely. She could finally stop working 3 part-time jobs just to afford her tiny studio apartment. She could focus on her art without constantly worrying about rent. But marry a complete stranger? A judge she had never even met. Why him? She managed to ask. Your grandmother and Judge Blackwell's late mother were best friends. Before your grandmother's health declined, she and the judge's mother made a pact. They believed you two would be perfect for each other. Judge Blackwell's mother passed away 5 years ago, but your grandmother held on to this wish. And he agreed to this? He owes your grandmother a tremendous debt. She paid for his entire education when his family had nothing. She believed in him when no one else did. He has agreed to honor her final wish. 2 weeks later, Catley found herself sitting in a coffee shop near the courthouse, waiting to meet the man who would become her husband. She had looked him up online and found dozens of articles praising his legal brilliance and uncompromising ethics. Every photo showed the same thing. A devastatingly handsome man with sharp features, dark hair, and eyes that seemed to look straight through the camera with cool intelligence. Not a single smile in any of them. When Adrian Blackwell walked into the coffee shop, Catley felt her breath catch. He was even more imposing in person, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders filling out his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His presence commanded attention without him saying a word. Every head in the coffee shop turned as he scanned the room, his gray eyes finally landing on her. "Miss Martinez?" he said as he approached, his voice deep and controlled. "I'm Adrian Blackwell." "Please call me Catley," she said, standing and extending her hand. When his hand enveloped hers, she felt an unexpected jolt of electricity that made her pulse quicken. He released her hand quickly, as if he had felt it too, and sat down across from her with rigid posture. For a long moment, neither spoke. Catley studied his face, noting the tension in his jaw and the careful way he kept space between them, even while sitting. "I want to be clear about the terms," Adrian began, his tone businesslike. "This marriage is to fulfill your grandmother's wishes and my obligation to her. I require nothing from you beyond appearing as my wife in public when necessary. You'll have your own wing of the house. Your inheritance will be yours to do with as you please. After a reasonable time, perhaps a year, we can quietly divorce if you wish." Catley felt something twist in her chest. His coldness was almost palpable, like touching ice. "That sounds very practical," she replied, trying to match his tone. "And what about you? What do you get from this arrangement?" For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. "Peace of mind that I've honored the woman who gave me everything. Your grandmother saved my life in ways that go beyond money. This is the least I can do." The wedding took place at the courthouse 3 weeks later. Catley wore a simple cream dress she had found at a vintage shop, and Adrian wore another impeccable dark suit. There were no guests, only the court clerk, who served as their witness. When the judge officiating asked Adrian if he took Catley to be his wife, it was the briefest hesitation before he said, "I do," in that controlled voice. When it was time to kiss, he brushed his lips against her cheek so quickly she barely felt it. Adrian's mansion was located in an exclusive neighborhood filled with old money and older trees. The house itself was a stunning example of colonial architecture with white columns and manicured gardens. Inside, everything was elegant and expensive, but cold. It felt more like a museum than a home. "Mrs. Chen will show you to your rooms," Adrian said, gesturing to a kind-faced older woman who appeared from a side hallway. "I have work to attend to." He disappeared into what she assumed was his study before Catley could respond. Mrs. Chun, who introduced herself as the housekeeper, gave Catley an apologetic smile. "Don't mind Mr. Blackwell. He's not used to having anyone else in the house. He's been alone here for almost 10 years. The east wing that would be Catley's was beautiful, with a bedroom suite larger than her entire previous apartment, a walk-in closet that echoed when she stepped inside, and a bathroom with a soaking tub that looked like it had never been used. But despite the luxury, Catley felt desperately lonely as she unpacked her few belongings. They looked pitiful in the vast space. That first week, she barely saw Adrian. He left before dawn and returned after she had gone to bed. They had exactly 3 interactions, all of them brief and formal. "Good morning." "Good evening." "Did you sleep well?" The house was so quiet that Catley found herself talking to herself just to hear a human voice. On the 8th night, unable to sleep, Catley wandered into the gardens behind the house. The moon was full, casting silver light over the rose bushes and stone pathways. That's when she heard it. A tiny, pitiful mewing sound coming from beneath a hedge. She knelt down and found a small gray kitten, no more than a few weeks old, shivering and alone. Without thinking, Catley scooped up the tiny creature and held it close to her chest. The kitten immediately began to purr, a sound that seemed impossibly loud for such a small animal. "What are you doing out here alone?" Catley whispered, examining the kitten. It was a boy, with bright green eyes and oversized ears. "Where's your mama?" The kitten just purred louder and nuzzled against her hand. Catley made a decision. She couldn't leave him out here. She carried him inside, wrapping him in a soft scarf from her room, and found some milk in the massive kitchen. The kitten lapped it up desperately. She was sitting on the kitchen floor, watching the kitten explore the tile when she heard footsteps. Adrian appeared in the doorway, still dressed in his work clothes despite the late hour. He stopped short when he saw her. "What is that?" he asked, his eyes on the kitten. "I found him in the garden. He was alone and cold. I couldn't leave him out there." Catley stood, preparing for an argument. "If you don't want him in the house, I can take him to my rooms and keep him there." Adrian stared at the kitten, who chose that moment to wobble over to his shoes and begin climbing up his pant leg with tiny claws. For the first time since she had met him, Catley saw Adrian's expression soften. He reached down and carefully detached the kitten, holding the small creature in his large hands with surprising gentleness. "He's very small," Adrian said quietly. "Too young to be away from his mother? I'll take him to a vet tomorrow. Make sure he's healthy." Adrian looked at her then, really looked at her, and Catley saw something in his gray eyes that made her heart skip. Loneliness. Deep, aching loneliness that mirrored her own. "He can stay," Adrian said. "Mrs. Chen can help you set up what he needs." "Thank you," Catley said softly. Adrian handed the kitten back to her, and their fingers brushed. He pulled back as if burned, that wall slamming back into place. "I should get back to work. Good night, Catley. Good night, Adrian." As he walked away, the kitten mewed loudly, and Adrian paused at the doorway. Without turning around, he said, "What will you name him?" Catley looked down at the gray ball of fluff in her hands.
"Pepper."
"His name is Pepper." She could have sworn she saw Adrian's shoulders relax slightly before he disappeared into the hallway. Catley stood in the enormous kitchen holding a tiny kitten and felt the first spark of hope. Maybe this cold, lonely man wasn't as unreachable as he seemed. Maybe they were both just waiting for someone to knock on the walls they had built around themselves. Pepper purred in her arms. And somewhere in the silent mansion, Catley heard a door close softly instead of slam. It was a small thing, but it felt like a beginning. Pepper became an unexpected bridge between two isolated hearts. The kitten had no respect for the invisible boundaries that Adrian had established. Wandering freely between the east and west wings of the mansion, Catley would often find tiny paw prints on documents in Adrian's study, or discover Pepper curled up on Adrian's laptop keyboard when she went looking for him. More surprisingly, Adrian seemed to encourage it. He installed a small cat door between their wings. He came home one evening with an elaborate cat tree that must have cost hundreds of dollars. When Catley raised her eyebrows at the extravagance, Adrian simply said, "He needs proper stimulation," before retreating to his study. But the real change began 3 weeks after Pepper's arrival. Catley had been working on a painting in the conservatory, which she had claimed as her studio. The evening light was perfect, golden and warm, and she was lost in the flow of creation when she heard footsteps behind her. "You're very talented," Adrian said, and Catley nearly dropped her brush in surprise. He stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and his jacket gone. Pepper was draped over his shoulder like a fuzzy scarf. "Thank you," Catley managed, wiping paint-splattered hands on her apron. "I didn't hear you come home. I've been watching you work for a few minutes." "I hope that doesn't make me sound like a stalker," he said, and there was a hint of something almost like humor in his voice. "Only a little," Catley teased gently, then held her breath, worried she had overstepped. But Adrian's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but was closer than she had ever seen. He moved into the room, studying her paintings with genuine interest. She had been working on a series depicting loneliness in beautiful spaces. Empty ballrooms, abandoned gardens, solitary figures in vast landscapes. "These are remarkable," Adrian said quietly, stopping in front of her favorite piece. It showed a man standing at the window of a grand house, looking out at a world he couldn't quite reach. "They make me feel something I usually try very hard not to feel." "What's that?" Catley asked softly. "Seen," he replied, and the vulnerability in that single word made her chest ache. They stood there in comfortable silence until Pepper decided to launch himself from Adrian's shoulder toward a dangling paintbrush. Adrian caught him with reflexes that surprised Catley, cradling the kitten against his chest. "Would you like to have dinner with me?" Adrian asked suddenly, not meeting her eyes. "Not in separate rooms. Actually, together? Mrs. Chen makes excellent pasta, and it seems wasteful to eat alone when we're both in the same house." "I'd like that very much," Catley said, her heart beating faster. That dinner changed everything. Away from the formality of their initial meetings, Adrian began to reveal himself. He talked about his childhood, about growing up poor with a single mother who worked 3 jobs, about how Catley's grandmother had seen potential in an angry, defensive teenager and given him not just money but hope. "She told me that intelligence without compassion was just cruelty," Adrian said, twirling pasta on his fork. "That the law should protect the vulnerable, not just serve the powerful. She changed my entire worldview." "She had a gift for seeing people's hearts," Catley replied. "She did the same for me when my parents died. I was so lost, and she gave me art as a way to process grief." "Is that why you paint lonely spaces?" Adrian asked, his gray eyes intense on her face. "Maybe, or maybe I paint what I know." Elise took a breath and decided to be brave. "Adrian, why do you live alone in this huge house? Mrs. Chen mentioned you've been here for 10 years. His expression shuddered slightly, but he didn't retreat entirely. "After I became a judge, I threw myself into work. I told myself I was too busy for relationships. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of not being enough. Of someone seeing past the success to the poor kid who still feels like he doesn't belong in places like this." He gestured to the elegant dining room, "and of wanting something so badly that losing it would destroy me." Catley reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I understand that fear. After my parents died, I was terrified of loving anyone too much, of having them taken away too." Adrian turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. The touch was electric, but this time neither pulled away. They sat there, hands joined across the dinner table, till Pepper jumped onto Adrian's lap and broke the moment. The dinners became a nightly ritual. Then Adrian started coming home earlier. He would find Catley in her studio and sit quietly, reading case files while she painted. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they simply existed in comfortable silence. The mansion began to feel less like a museum and more like a home. 6 weeks into their marriage, Adrian received an invitation to the annual Federal Justice Foundation Gala. He stood in Catley's studio doorway, holding the embossed card and looking uncomfortable. "I usually decline these events," he said. But this year I'm being honored with an award. I'm expected to attend. That's wonderful, Adrian. You should definitely go, Catley said, focusing on her painting to hide her disappointment that he hadn't invited her. I want you to come with me, Adrian said quickly. As my wife, not as an obligation, but because I want you there. Catley turned to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his face. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, he replied. I want the world to know that you're mine. The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. Then I'd be honored to go with you. The night of the gala, Catley wore a midnight blue gown that she had found at a consignment boutique. It hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, and she had swept her dark hair up, leaving a few curls to frame her face. When she descended the main staircase, Adrian was waiting in the foyer in a perfectly fitted tuxedo. The look on his face made the hours of preparation worthwhile. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, his gray eyes darkening with something that made her skin flush. You're breathtaking, he said hoarsely, offering his arm at the gala, held in a historic hotel ballroom. Catley watched Adrian transform into his public persona. He was confident, commanding, shaking hands and accepting congratulations with practiced ease. But his hand never left the small of her back, a constant warm presence that anchored her in the sea of strangers. Judge Blackwell, a woman's voice cut through the crowd, sharp and possessive. A striking blonde in a red dress approached, her smile not reaching her cold blue eyes. What a surprise to see you here with a date. Lauren, Adrian said with noticeable coolness. This is my wife, Catley. Catley, this is Lauren Hastings, a colleague from the district attorney's office. Lauren's smile turned brittle. Wife, how delightful. I had no idea you were even seeing anyone, Adrian. This must have been quite sudden. When you know, Adrian replied smoothly, pulling Catley closer against his side. Ow, romantic, Lauren said. But her eyes were calculating as they swept over Catley. You must tell me your secret, dear. Adrian has been immune to female attention for years. Whatever did you do to catch him? I didn't catch him, Catley said, meeting Lauren's gaze steadily. We caught each other. Before Lauren could respond, the master of ceremonies announced that dinner was being served. Adrian guided Catley away, his hand tightening on her waist. I apologize for her, he murmured. Lauren has been persistent in her pursuit for the past 2 years. I've never been interested. She's beautiful, Catley said, trying to keep the insecurity from her voice. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her. Right there in the middle of the crowded ballroom. She's nothing compared to you. Beauty without substance is just decoration. Catley, you have both, and you have something far more important. You have a good heart. The sincerity in his voice made her eyes sting with sudden tears. Before she could respond, the music started, and Adrian led her onto the dance floor. Dancing with Adrian was like floating. He moved with surprising grace for such a large man, guiding her confidently through the steps. As they swayed to the music, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. I need to tell you something, Adrian said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. These past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. This marriage stopped being an obligation for me the moment I saw you holding Pepper in the kitchen, so gentle with something small and vulnerable. Catley's heart pounded. It stopped being an obligation for me too. Somewhere between the dinners and the conversations and the comfortable silences, I fell for you, Adrian. He pulled back to look at her, his gray eyes intense. You fell for me? Completely? She whispered. The music swelled around them, but Adrian had stopped dancing. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks with infinite tenderness. Catley, I need to tell you something. I've never done this before. Done what? Any of this. The dating, the romance, the intimacy. His voice was raw with honesty. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, keeping everyone at a distance. You're the first person I've ever wanted to let in. The first person I've ever loved. The word hung in the air between them, precious and fragile. You love me? Catley asked, her voice breaking. Desperately, he replied. But I don't know how to show you properly. I don't know the steps to this dance. Catley smiled through tears that were now flowing freely. Then we'll learn together. Adrian, I love you too. Not the judge, not the success story, but you. The man who cradles kittens gently and listens to me talk about art for hours and loosens his tie at dinner because he's finally relaxed. Adrian kissed her then, in front of hundreds of people, a kiss that was tender and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, applause rippled through the ballroom, but Catley barely heard it. She was lost in Adrian's eyes, in the love she saw reflected there. Take me home, she whispered against his lips. They left before his award was even presented. Hurrying to the car like teenagers escaping a party, the drive back to the mansion was charged with anticipation. Adrian held her hand the entire way, occasionally bringing it to his lips to press kisses against her knuckles. Inside the mansion, they stood in the foyer, suddenly shy despite their declarations. Pepper appeared from somewhere, winding between their legs and purring loudly. Even the cat knows something important is happening, Catley said, trying to lighten the moment. Adrian smiled. A real, full smile that transformed his face. Come with me, he said, taking her hand and leading her toward his wing of the house. His bedroom was as elegant as the rest of the mansion, but it felt warmer somehow, more personal. There were books stacked on the nightstand, a framed photo of his mother on the dresser, and on the chair by the window, one of Catley's paint-splattered scarves that she had been looking for. You took my scarf, she said. Touching the soft fabric, I needed something of yours nearby, Adrian admitted, looking embarrassed. I told myself it was ridiculous, but I couldn't help it. Catley turned to him, reaching up to loosen his bow tie. Adrian, we don't have to rush this. We have all the time in the world. I don't want to wait anymore, he said, his hand settling on her waist. I've waited my entire life for you. I just need you to be patient with me. I want this to be perfect for you, but I don't really know what I'm doing. She smiled up at him, her heart overflowing with love for this powerful man who was being so vulnerable with her. It's already perfect because it's us. Just follow what feels right. What followed was tender and sweet and awkward and beautiful all at once. Adrian touched her with reverence, learning her body with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. When Catley guided his hands, showed him what she liked, he paid attention with endearing concentration. And when they finally came together, it felt like two puzzle pieces clicking into place. Afterward, they lay tangled in his sheets, Catley's head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. That was incredible, Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion. You're incredible. We're incredible together, Catley corrected, pressing a kiss over his heart. Pepper chose that moment to jump onto the bed, curling up at their feet and purring like a motorboat. They both laughed, and Adrian pulled a blanket over them, creating a cocoon of warmth. I never want to sleep alone again, Adrian whispered into the darkness. Then don't, Catley replied simply. I'm right here and I'm not going anywhere, as they drifted off to sleep. Wrapped in each other's arms with a contented kitten at their feet, neither noticed the shadow that passed by the window outside. Someone had been watching, and they were not pleased with what they had seen. Morning came with golden sunlight streaming through. Adrian's windows and Pepper pouncing on their feet beneath the blankets. Catley woke, wrapped in Adrian's arms, his face peaceful in sleep, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. She traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers, and his eyes fluttered open. The smile he gave her was pure happiness, unguarded and real. Good morning, my wife, he murmured. Pulling her closer for a kiss that quickly deepened, they were interrupted by insistent meowing, and the sound of Mrs. Chen calling from downstairs that breakfast was ready. Laughing, they reluctantly untangled themselves and got dressed, stealing kisses between putting on clothes. The happiness of that morning made what happened next even more devastating. They were finishing breakfast when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Chen returned moments later, looking uncomfortable, followed by a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated disapproval. Uncle Richard, Adrian said, standing abruptly, his entire body tensing. What are you doing here? Richard Blackwell looked around the dining room with cold assessment, before his gaze settled on Catley. So this is the girl, the one who trapped you into marriage. Uncle Richard, you need to leave, Adrian said, his voice taking on the commanding tone Catley had heard him use in recordings of his courtroom proceedings. I'm not going anywhere until I've said my piece, Richard replied. Do you know who I am, young lady? No, Catley said, standing to face him despite her heart pounding with anxiety. I'm Adrian's only living relative, and I've come to save him from making the biggest mistake of his life. Richard pulled out his phone, scrolling through something before holding it out. I had you investigated. Catley Martinez, struggling artist, barely making rent, working multiple jobs. Then suddenly, you're married to one of the wealthiest judges in the state. Quite convenient. It's not like that, Catley said, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. Isn't it? You inherited $3 million from a woman who conveniently included a marriage clause in her will. A woman who had no biological relation to you but everything to gain by securing her grandson's future. Richard's voice dripped with disdain. Except her grandson doesn't need securing. He needs protecting from gold diggers like you. That's enough, Adrian roared, stepping between Catley and his uncle. You know nothing about our relationship, don't I? Adrian, you've been alone for years. You had no interest in marriage or relationships, and suddenly you're wed to a woman half your age who stood to lose millions if you didn't say yes. Wake up. Catley's grandmother was the woman who saved my life, Adrian said through clenched teeth. She gave me everything when no one else would. And you repaid that debt with scholarship donations and charity work for years? You owed her nothing more? Certainly not a sham marriage to her opportunistic granddaughter. Richard turned back to Catley. How much will it take for you to leave quietly? Name your price. I'll double the inheritance. I don't want your money, Catley said, but tears were streaming down her face now. I love him. Love, Richard scoffed. You've known him for less than 3 months. That's not love. That's infatuation mixed with greed. Get out of my house, Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet. Now, I'm trying to save you from repeating your father's mistakes, Richard said, and those words made Adrian go very still. Yes, I know about your father. How he fell for a woman too quickly, trusted too easily. How he died leaving nothing but debt and broken promises. Your mother spent years cleaning up his messes. My father loved my mother completely. Their marriage was the one good thing in his difficult life, Adrian said. But Catley could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Is that what your mother told you? Did she mention that your father nearly bankrupted the family in his last year, making reckless investments because he was so convinced he needed to provide more for her? Did she tell you that she regretted ever meeting him because love made him stupid? You're lying, Adrian said, but he sounded less certain now. Am I? Ask yourself why your mother never remarried, never even dated after he died. She learned her lesson about love the hard way. Richard moved toward the door, then paused. Think about it, Adrian. This girl shows up with a convenient inheritance, you're married within weeks, and now you're talking about love. History repeating itself. Don't be your father's son. After Richard left, the silence in the dining room was suffocating. Adrian stood with his back to Catley, his shoulders rigid with tension. Pepper jumped onto the table, sensing the distress. But even his purring couldn't break through the atmosphere. Adrian, Catley said softly. Reaching for him, he moved away from her touch, and that small action broke her heart. I need to think, he said, his voice hollow. I need time to process this. Process what? Everything he said was designed to manipulate you, Catley said desperately. Your uncle clearly has his own agenda, does he? Adrian turned to face her, and the doubt in his eyes was like a knife to her chest. 3 months ago, I was content with my solitary life. Now I'm talking about love and forever with a woman I barely know. What if he's right? What if I'm being blinded by loneliness and attraction? You think I'm using you? Catley asked, her voice breaking. After everything we've shared? I don't know what to think anymore, Adrian said, running his hands through his hair. My whole life I've been careful, measured, logical. With you, I threw all of that away. What if that was a mistake? The words hung in the air like poison. Catley felt something inside her shatter, all the happiness of the past weeks crumbling to dust. "I see," she said quietly. "Your uncle visits for 10 minutes and undoes everything we built together. That's how little you trust me. How little you trust what we have, Catley. That's not fair, isn't it? If you truly loved me, if you truly believed in us, his words wouldn't matter. But they do matter, which means some part of you agrees with him." Catley wiped her tears roughly. "Maybe he's right about one thing. Maybe 3 months isn't long enough to really know someone." "What are you saying?" Adrian asked, and now there was fear in his voice. "I'm saying I won't stay where I'm not trusted. I won't be in a marriage where my motives are constantly questioned." Catley headed toward the stairs, Pepper scrambling to follow her. "I'll pack my things and leave today. You can have your solitary life back. Apparently that's what you prefer anyway." "Catley." "Wait," Adrian called, but she was already running up the stairs, tears blinding her in her room. She pulled out her old battered suitcase and began throwing clothes into it with shaking hands. Pepper paced around her feet, meowing anxiously. The kitten had brought them together, and now he was watching them fall apart. There was a knock on the door, and Mrs. Chen entered, her kind face creased with worry. "Mrs. Blackwell, please don't leave like this." "I have to," Catley said, barely able to speak through her tears. "I can't stay where I'm not wanted, where I'm not trusted. Mr. Blackwell loves you. Anyone can see that. Love isn't enough without trust," Catley replied. Zipping up her suitcase, she had called a car service and was waiting in the foyer. With her bag, when Adrian emerged from his study, he looked haggard, as if he had aged years in the past hour. "You're really leaving," he said. "And it wasn't a question. You're really letting me," she countered. They stared at each other across the marble expanse, and Catley memorized every detail of his face. The gray eyes that had looked at her with such love just hours ago, the strong jaw that she had kissed, the hands that had held her so tenderly. "I need you to know," Adrian said, his voice rough, "that these past weeks with you were the best of my life. Even if I question the speed of everything, I don't question that what I felt was real." "Past tense," Catley noted bitterly. "You're already talking about us in past tense. I just need time to think clearly, without emotion clouding my judgment." "That's the problem, Adrian. Life isn't a courtroom. Love isn't logical. You can't approach marriage like it's a case to be analyzed." Catley picked up her suitcase as a car horn sounded outside. "Goodbye, Adrian. I hope you find whatever clarity you're looking for." She walked out the door without looking back, because if she had, she would have seen Adrian reach for her, his face crumbling with regret. She would have seen him take a step forward before stopping himself. She would have seen Mrs. Chen put a comforting hand on his shoulder as he watched the woman he loved. Drive away, Catley went to stay with her friend Emma, sleeping on a lumpy couch and crying herself to sleep every night. Emma tried to comfort her, but nothing helped. The pain of losing Adrian was worse than anything she had experienced, even worse than losing her parents because she had chosen to walk away from this. 5 days passed. 5 days of Adrian not calling, not texting, not trying to explain or apologize. Catley had her answer. His silence spoke volumes about his priorities. Logic and caution had won over love. On the 6th day, Catley was at the airport, having bought a one-way ticket to Portland where a friend had offered her a place to stay and a fresh start. She was going through security when she heard someone calling her name Catley. Catley Martinez. She turned to see Adrian running through the terminal, pushing past annoyed travelers, his hair disheveled and his shirt partially untucked. He looked nothing like the composed judge she had first met. He looked desperate and human and perfect. "What are you doing here?" she asked as he reached her, breathing hard. "Stopping you from leaving. Stopping myself from making the biggest mistake of my life." He took her hands in his, not caring that dozens of people were watching. "I was an idiot, coward. I let fear and doubt poison what we had. Adrian, it's been almost a week. You had plenty of time to come to that conclusion." "I know. I spent those days trying to convince myself that my uncle was right, that I was being reckless and foolish. I pulled out every logical argument for why our marriage was a mistake." He lifted her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. And every single argument fell apart because none of them accounted for one simple truth. I love you. Not the idea of you, not the convenience of you, but you. Catley Martinez, who rescues kittens and paints loneliness and makes my enormous house feel like a home. How did you even know I'd be here? Catley asked, torn between hope and lingering hurt. Mrs. Chen may have mentioned that Emma said you were leaving town. I've been to 3 airports today, he smiled weakly. Apparently I don't think clearly when it comes to you, and I finally realized that's not a weakness. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Your uncle will come back. He'll try again to break us apart, and we'll face him together. I've already had my lawyer draft a restraining order, and I called my mother's old friends, the ones who knew my father. They told me the truth about my parents' marriage. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of love. My father didn't make reckless choices. He made brave ones. He loved my mother enough to take risks, and she loved him the same way. That's what I want with you. Tears were streaming down Catley's face now. I was so hurt, Adrian. When you doubted us, doubted me. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me. He got down on one knee right there in the airport security line, pulling out a ring box. Inside was a stunning vintage ring with emeralds surrounded by diamonds. This was my grandmother's ring, the only valuable thing my mother had left from her family. She gave it to me years ago and told me to give it to someone who made me believe in love. Catley, will you marry me? Not because of your grandmother's will, not out of obligation, but because I love you, and I want to spend every day for the rest of my life proving it to you. We're already married, Catley said through tears and laughter. Then will you stay married to me? Will you give me another chance to be the husband you deserve? Catley looked at this powerful man kneeling before her in a crowded airport, his heart completely exposed, and knew her answer. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll stay married to you. He stood and kissed her to the applause of everyone around them. Security guards were smiling. Strangers were filming on their phones. And Catley didn't care about any of it. She was in Adrian's arms, where she belonged. I have something for you too, Adrian said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a squirming ball of gray fur. Pepper poked his head out, meowing indignantly at being confined. You brought Pepper to the airport? Catley laughed, taking the kitten and cuddling him close. He missed you. We both did. The house has been unbearably empty without you. Adrian wrapped his arms around both Catley and the cat. Come home with me, please. I never bought a return ticket, Catley admitted. That's fine. I have the jet waiting. You flew here in a private jet? I told you I've been to 3 airports today. I was taking no chances on missing you. He grinned, and it was boyish and happy and free. When you love someone, you don't approach it logically. You dive in completely. They left the airport together, Pepper purring contentedly between them. The drive back to the mansion felt different this time. Everything felt different. This wasn't a marriage of obligation or convenience. This was a real hard one, and all the more precious because they had almost lost it. 6 months later, Catley stood in the conservatory that had become her studio, one hand on her rounded belly and the other holding a paintbrush. She was working on a new series, but these paintings were different from her earlier work. Instead of loneliness, they depicted connection. Instead of isolation, they showed love. Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. How are my 2 favorite people doing today? Your daughter is very active, Catley said, leaning back against him. I think she's going to be a dancer. Or a judge who paces while thinking, Adrian suggested. His hand joining hers on her belly, Pepper, now fully grown into a handsome gray cat, wound between their legs and meowed for attention. They both laughed, and Adrian bent to scoop up the cat. You know, Catley said, your uncle was wrong about everything except one thing. What's that? Adrian asked, kissing her temple. History did repeat itself. Just like your parents, we chose love over logic, bravery over caution. And just like them, we're going to be happy. Deliriously happy, Adrian corrected, setting Pepper down and turning Catley to face him. Every single day with you is a gift I never thought I'd receive. You taught me that opening your heart isn't a weakness. It's the bravest thing a person can do. They kissed as the afternoon sun painted everything gold, and somewhere in the mansion, Mrs. Chen smiled and went back to preparing dinner for the family that had finally filled the empty house with love. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories. Today, Sophia Carter pressed the heel of her palm against her tired eyes as the clock on her computer screen blinked past 8 in the evening. The offices of Hawthorne Technologies were nearly deserted, just the way she preferred when finishing up the mountain of quarterly reports that her boss, Julian Hawthorne, needed by morning. The silence was peaceful, broken only by the soft clicking of her keyboard in the distant, on the building's air conditioning. Her phone buzzed insistently on the desk, and she smiled when she saw her best friend Rachel's name flashing on the screen. She swiped to answer the video call, propping the phone against her monitor. Finally, I thought you'd fallen asleep at your desk again. Rachel's cheerful face appeared on the screen, her red hair pulled back in a messy bun. Not yet. But give me another hour, Sophia laughed, stretching her arms above her head. What's up? I'm calling to check on you because normal human beings leave work at 5, not 8 at night. Your boss is working you too hard. Sophia shook her head. Julian's not like that. He actually told me to go home hours ago. I just wanted to get ahead on these reports, so tomorrow would be easier. Julian, huh? First name basis with the billionaire boss, Rachel teased, waggling her eyebrows suggestively. Stop it! Sophia felt her cheeks warm. It's purely professional. Sure it is. So, speaking of your non-existent love life, how did that date go last night with that guy from the coffee shop? Sophia groaned, leaning back in her chair. It was terrible. He spent the entire dinner talking about his cryptocurrency investments and how much money he's made. Then he suggested we skip dessert and go back to his place. Huh? Another one? What did you say? I told him I had an early morning and called a cab. I'm so tired of guys like that. They only want one thing. Rachel's expression softened with sympathy. Soph, I hate to break it to you, but most guys in their late 20s are looking for that. You might be setting yourself up for disappointment with your expectations. Sophia glanced at her computer screen where the video call interface with Julian still showed as active. She clicked the red button to disconnect, watching the screen go black before turning her full attention back to Rachel. I know my standards might seem old-fashioned, but I'm not changing them. I want my first time to mean something. I want it to be with someone who loves me for more than just my body, someone who wants to build a real future with me. Her voice grew more passionate as she spoke. Is it really too much to ask for a man who respects my choice to wait until marriage? Wait, Sophia, are you telling me you're still a virgin? Rachel's eyes widened in surprise. Sophia felt her face flush deeper. Yes, and before you say anything, it's not because I haven't had opportunities. I've turned down plenty of guys. I'm choosing to wait for the right person, for someone who wants to marry me and commit to a real relationship first. Rachel was quiet for a moment, then smiled warmly. Honestly, Soph, I think that's really beautiful. I just worry sometimes that you're going to end up waiting forever for some perfect guy who might not exist. I'd rather be alone than settle for someone who doesn't respect what's important to me. My first time is going to be special. It's going to be with someone who truly loves me, who sees me as more than just another conquest. And if that means I have to wait, then I'll wait. The two friends continued talking for another 20 minutes, shifting to lighter topics about Rachel's upcoming birthday party and a new restaurant they wanted to try. After they said their goodbyes, Sophia packed up her belongings and headed home. Completely unaware that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined, 3 floors above, Julian Hawthorne sat frozen in his leather executive chair, his heart pounding in his chest. The video call had never disconnected on his end. When Sophia thought she had ended their earlier business meeting, a technical glitch had kept the line open. He had been reviewing contracts when her conversation with Rachel came through his speakers, and he had heard every single word. Julian ran his hands through his dark brown hair, his mind racing. He should have said something immediately, should have let her know the call was still active. But he had been paralyzed, first by embarrassment, and then by something else entirely. Something that felt like awe. Sophia Carter. His brilliant, dedicated assistant who had worked for him for the past 6 months. He had always noticed her, of course. She was beautiful in a natural, understated way with her warm brown eyes and genuine smile. She was organized, intelligent, and had an incredible work ethic. But he had kept his distance, maintaining strict professionalism because she was his employee. Now, everything had shifted. Julian thought about the women he had dated over the years. Models, actresses, socialites who were attracted to his wealth and status. Relationships that burned hot and fast before fizzling out within weeks. He had never met anyone with the kind of integrity and strength that Sophia possessed. She had values, real values that she refused to compromise. In a world where everyone seemed willing to do anything to get ahead, she stood firm in her beliefs. He closed his laptop and walked to the floor, 2 ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Tomorrow would be a normal workday on the surface, but he knew he could never see Sophia the same way again. She had become infinitely more interesting, more captivating. The question was, what was he going to do about it? The next morning, Sophia arrived at the office at her usual time, carrying her coffee and wearing a navy blue dress that was both professional and flattering. She greeted the security guard in the lobby and took the elevator up to the executive floor, her mind already organizing the day's tasks. Julian was already in his office when she arrived, which was unusual. He typically came in an hour after her. She knocked lightly on his open door. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne. You're here early today." He looked up from his computer, and something in his expression made her pause. His gray eyes seemed to see right through her, intense and focused in a way she had never noticed before.
Hi.
"I couldn't sleep, so I figured I might as well get a head start on the day." He stood up and walked around his desk, leaning against it casually. "That dress looks very nice on you." Sophia felt a flutter in her stomach that she quickly suppressed. "Thank you, sir. I have your schedule organized for today. You have a board meeting at 10, lunch with the development team at noon, and a conference call with the Tokyo office at 3. Actually, I was thinking we could have lunch together instead. Just the 2 of us. There are some new project ideas I'd like to discuss in a more relaxed setting, where professional instincts warring with something else. The development team has been looking forward to that lunch for weeks. It might be better to keep that appointment." Julian nodded slowly, a small smile playing at his lips. "You're right, of course. But perhaps we could schedule something for later this week. Dinner, maybe? Mr. Hawthorne, I appreciate the offer, but I think it's best if we keep our relationship strictly professional. Call me Julian, please. And I understand your hesitation, but this really is about work. I value your input on several new initiatives." Sophia studied his face, trying to read his intentions. There was something different about him today, something she could not quite identify. "If it's about work, we can discuss it here in the office during business hours." "Fair enough," he said, though his smile suggested he was not giving up that easily as the days passed. Sophia noticed the change in Julian's behavior. He found reasons to stop by her desk throughout the day, asking questions that did not really need asking. He complimented her work more frequently, noticed when she changed her hairstyle, and seemed genuinely interested in her opinions on matters beyond her job description. During a morning meeting 2 weeks later, Julian announced a company-wide charity initiative to support local schools in underprivileged areas. Sophia watched him present the program with passion and genuine care, seeing a side of him that the public rarely witnessed. After the meeting, she approached him. "That was a wonderful initiative. I had no idea you were so involved in education reform." Julian's expression softened. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Sophia. I'd like the chance to change that." She felt her resolve weakening slightly, but held firm. "Mr. Hawthorne, Julian, I need to be honest with you. I've heard stories about your personal life, about the different women you've been photographed with at various events. I'm not interested in being another brief chapter in that story." His jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. "I can't change my past, but I can tell you that none of those relationships meant anything real. They were superficial, empty. But you, Sophia, you're different from anyone I've ever met."
Oh.
"How can you say that? You barely know me." "Then let me get to know you. No pressure, no expectations. Just give me a chance to show you I'm more than the tabloid version of Julian Hawthorne. Sophia looked into his eyes and saw something that gave her pause. Sincerity, vulnerability, hope. Against her better judgment, she found herself nodding. One dinner. As friends and colleagues, nothing more. His smile was radiant. That's all I'm asking for. The restaurant Julian chose was elegant but not ostentatious, a quiet Italian place tucked away from the main tourist areas. Sophia arrived wearing a simple black dress, her hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She spotted Julian immediately at a corner table, and her breath caught slightly when he stood to greet her. In a charcoal suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone, he looked relaxed and devastatingly handsome. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out her chair. "Thank you. This place is lovely." Sophia glanced around at the warm lighting and intimate atmosphere, trying to calm her racing heart. "It's owned by a friend of mine. The food is incredible, and we won't be bothered by photographers here." He settled into his own seat across from her. "I know privacy is important to you." They ordered wine and appetizers, and to Sophia's surprise, the conversation flowed naturally. Julian asked about her family, her childhood in a small town in Pennsylvania, her dreams beyond her current job. He listened intently, asking follow-up questions that showed genuine interest. "My turn," Sophia said, after the waiter cleared their appetizer plates. "Tell me something real about Julian Hawthorne, something that's not in Forbes magazine." He smiled, taking a sip of wine before answering. "Every Sunday I visit my mother. She lives in a modest house in the suburbs, the same house I grew up in. She refuses to move, even though I've offered to buy her anything she wants. We have lunch together and she tells me stories about my father. Your father passed away, didn't he? 5 years ago. Heart attack. He was a public school teacher for 30 years. Julian's voice grew softer. He taught me that real wealth isn't measured in money, but in the lives you touch and the integrity you maintain. Everything I've built, I built to honor his memory." Sophia felt her chest tighten with emotion. This was not the playboy billionaire the media portrayed. This was a man with depth, with values that resonated with her own. "I donate 60% of my income to educational charities," he continued. "Nobody knows that except my accountant, and now you. I don't do it for publicity. I do it because I genuinely believe every child deserves the same opportunities I had. That's incredibly admirable, Julian. I'm not telling you this to impress you. I'm telling you because I want you to know who I really am." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. "The women you mentioned, the ones from the tabloids, they never knew this side of me. I never let them in. But with you, I want to be completely honest." Sophia felt herself softening, her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "Why me? What makes me different?" "Because you see me as a person, not a bank account. Because you challenge me, stand up to me, tell me when I'm wrong. Because you have principles you refuse to compromise, and I respect that more than you can imagine." Their entrees arrived and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Julian made her laugh with stories about his early startup days, sleeping in his office and living on ramen noodles. Sophia shared embarrassing college stories that had him grinning. By the time dessert came, she realized she had not thought about maintaining professional distance for over an hour. "I should probably get home," she said reluctantly as they finished their tiramisu. "I have an early morning tomorrow. Let me drive you." In his car, a sleek Mercedes that smelled of leather and his cologne, Sophia found herself acutely aware of his presence. His hand rested on the gear shift between them, close enough that she could feel its warmth. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Julian said as they pulled up to her apartment building. "I did too. More than I expected to, honestly." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Sophia, I know you have doubts about me, and they're justified based on what you've seen and heard. But I'm asking you to give me a real chance. Not as your boss, but as a man who is genuinely interested in getting to know you better. Julian, I need you to understand something." Sophia took a deep breath. "I'm not like the other women you've dated. I have certain beliefs, certain values about relationships and intimacy that most people my age don't share anymore." "I know," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. What do you mean, you know? He looked uncomfortable, guilt flashing across his face. The video call that night a few weeks ago? It never disconnected on my end. I heard your conversation with Rachel. Sophia's face drained of color, then flushed hot with embarrassment and anger. You heard everything? And you never told me? I should have said something immediately, and I'm sorry I didn't. I was shocked at first, and then I was captivated. Sophia, hearing you talk about your values, about wanting something real and meaningful, it changed everything for me. So this whole time, every conversation we've had, you've been keeping this secret. She reached for the door handle. I need to go. Please wait. He gently caught her wrist. I know I should have told you sooner. It was wrong to keep it from you, but nothing I've said or done since then has been fake. My feelings are real, Sophia. I've fallen for you, completely and honestly. She turned back to him, tears glistening in her eyes. How can I trust that? How do I know you're not just intrigued by the challenge of someone who won't immediately jump into bed with you? Because I'm willing to wait, he said firmly. However long it takes. I respect your choice to save yourself for marriage, and I won't pressure you to change that. I want to do this right, Sophia. I want to court you properly, earn your trust, prove that I'm worthy of you. Sophia searched his face, looking for any hint of deception. All she saw was sincerity and hope. I don't know if I can do this. Well, let me show you. Give me 1 month. If after 30 days you still don't believe I'm serious, I'll back off completely. But please, give me the chance to prove myself. Against every logical instinct, Sophia found herself nodding. 1 month, but we take things slow, and you have to be completely honest with me from now on. No more secrets. No more secrets, he promised. The following weeks were unlike anything Sophia had experienced. Julian was attentive without being overbearing, romantic without being pushy. He sent flowers to her desk with handwritten notes that made her smile. He took her to art galleries and museums, learning her tastes and preferences. He introduced her to his mother, who welcomed Sophia with open arms and embarrassing baby pictures of Julian. He's never brought a woman to meet me before, his mother confided while Julian was in the kitchen making coffee. You must be very special. At work, they maintained professionalism, but everyone noticed the subtle changes. The way Julian's face lit up when Sophia entered a room. The private smiles they exchanged during meetings. The way he found excuses to work late when she did, just to keep her company. But it was not all smooth sailing. The physical attraction between them grew stronger every day, creating a tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. Their goodnight kisses at her door became longer, more heated. His hands would wander to her waist, her back, pulling her closer. She would run her fingers through his hair, feeling his heartbeat accelerate against her chest. One evening, after a particularly romantic dinner, they were in Julian's penthouse apartment. He had invited her up to see the view of the city, and they stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. His arms wrapped around her from behind. I could stay like this forever, he murmured against her hair. Sophia turned in his arms, looking up at him. The desire in his eyes was unmistakable, and she knew her own reflected the same hunger. When he kissed her this time, it was different. Deeper, more demanding. His hands moved over her body with increasing boldness, and she found herself responding in ways that scared her. Julian, she gasped when his lips moved to her neck. We should stop. I know, he breathed, but his hands continued their exploration. I know we should. She pushed gently against his chest, creating space between them. I'm serious. This is getting out of control. He stepped back immediately, running his hands through his hair in frustration. You're right. I'm sorry. It's just that being close to you and not being able to fully express how I feel is driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy too, she admitted, her voice shaking. I've never felt this way before. Never wanted someone so much. But I can't abandon everything I believe in, even for you. Julian cupped her face in his hands. I would never ask you to. Your strength and conviction are part of what makes you so incredible. I can wait, Sophia. I promise I can wait. Can you really? Because most men would have given up by now. I'm not most men. And you're not most women. What we have is worth waiting for. The month passed quickly, and Sophia found herself falling deeper in love with Julian every day. He kept his promise about respecting her boundaries, though the sexual tension between them remained constant and intense. They had long conversations about everything from philosophy to their favorite childhood memories. He supported her decision to enroll in night classes for her MBA, even offering to pay for it. Though she insisted on using her own savings, it was during a company gala, 3 months into their relationship, that everything came to a head. Sophia wore a stunning emerald green gown that made Julian's eyes darken with appreciation when he picked her up. "You're going to be the most beautiful woman there," he said, kissing her hand. The event was at a luxury hotel, filled with business executives, investors, and socialites. Julian kept Sophia close to his side, introducing her not as his assistant but as his girlfriend. She could feel the curious stares and hear the whispered conversations. But she held her head high. It was when she went to the restroom that she encountered trouble. A stunning blonde in a red dress that left little to the imagination cornered her by the sinks. "Ow. So you're the latest one," the woman said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm Veronica Sterling. Julian and I dated last year." Sophia recognized the name from tabloid photos. "Nice to meet you." "Don't get too comfortable, sweetie. Julian gets bored easily. He'll have his fun with you and move on, just like he did with me and all the others before. My relationship with Julian is none of your concern." Veronica laughed coldly. "Oh, honey, you actually think you're special? You think you're different? Let me guess, you're playing hard to get, and he's intrigued by the chase. But the moment you give in, he'll lose interest."
Oh.
Sophia felt doubt creep in, despite herself. "You don't know anything about us. I know Julian Hawthorne. I know he loves the thrill of conquest. And I know that wholesome little act you've got going won't hold his attention for long." Before Sophia could respond, the bathroom door opened and another woman entered. Veronica smirked and walked out, leaving Sophia staring at her reflection in the mirror, questioning everything. When she returned to the ballroom, Julian immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" "I met Veronica Sterling." Its expression darkened. "What did she say to you?" "It doesn't matter." "Does matter. Tell me." Sophia pulled him aside, away from the crowd. "She said, I'm just another conquest for you, that you'll get bored once I stop being a challenge." Julian took both her hands firmly. "Sophia, look at me. Veronica is bitter because I ended things with her when I realized she only cared about my money and status. She doesn't know anything about us, about what we have. But what if she's right? What if you only want me because I'm different from the others? What happens when that novelty wears off? Then I'll spend every day for the rest of my life proving her wrong." He pulled her closer. "I love you, Sophia Carter. Not because you're a challenge, not because you're different. I love you because of who you are. The goodness in your heart, the strength of your character, the way you make me want to be a better man." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You love me? I love you. And I want to spend my life with you, if you'll let me." She threw her arms around his neck, not caring who was watching. "I love you too, Julian. So much." He kissed her right there in the middle of the gala, a kiss that promised forever. The weeks following the gala were filled with a newfound joy and certainty. Julian and Sophia no longer hid their relationship. The office buzzed with the news that their CEO was seriously involved with his assistant. Some were supportive, others skeptical, but neither Julian nor Sophia cared about the gossip. They were too wrapped up in each other. However, the physical attraction between them grew increasingly difficult to manage. Every kiss left them breathless and wanting more. Every touch sent electricity through their bodies. They found themselves in situations where stopping became harder and harder. One Friday evening, Julian had planned something special. He picked Sophia up from her apartment with an overnight bag already packed in his car. "Where are we going?" she asked, curiosity lighting up her face. "You'll see. It's a surprise." They drove for 2 hours along the coast until they reached a private beach house that Julian had rented for the weekend. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The house was beautiful, modern, yet cozy, with large windows overlooking the water. "Julian, this is incredible," Sophia breathed. stepping onto the deck. "I thought we could use a getaway, just the two of us. No work, no distractions, just time together." That night, they cooked dinner together in the kitchen, laughing as Julian proved to be terrible at chopping vegetables and Sophia had to take over. They ate on the deck under the stars, listening to the waves crash against the shore. It was peaceful and perfect, and Sophia felt completely at ease. After dinner, they walked along the beach, barefoot, hand in hand. The moon was full, casting a silver path across the water. Julian stopped and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Sophia, I need to talk to you about something." Her heart skipped. "Okay, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've changed everything for me. You've made me believe in real love, in partnership, in building something meaningful with another person." He took both her hands in his. "But I also need to be honest about how difficult this is becoming." "The physical aspect," she said quietly, understanding immediately.
"Yes, I want you so badly, Sophia."
"Every moment we're together, it takes every ounce of my willpower not to cross the line. I'm not saying this to pressure you. I'm saying it because I promise to be honest." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. "I want you to, Julian? More than I ever thought possible. Sometimes I lie awake at night thinking about you, imagining what it would be like to be with you completely. And it scares me because I've never felt this way before. I don't want you to compromise your values for me. Your principles are part of who you are, and I love that about you." She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "What if I'm ready? What if I want to be with you?" Julian cupped her face gently. "Are you saying that because you truly want it, or because you think it's what I need to hear? I don't know anymore. I'm so confused. My whole life, I planned to wait until marriage. But being with you has made me question everything. Maybe I was being too rigid, too old-fashioned." He shook his head firmly. "No, don't doubt yourself because of me. Sophia, what you want is beautiful. It's rare and precious, and I won't be the reason you abandon it." He took a deep breath. "Which is why I've made a decision." "What decision?" "I'm going to wait too. Not just for you, but with you. We'll save our first time for our wedding night together. It will be special for both of us." Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "Julian, you don't have to do that. You've been with other women before. This is different for you. It's not different at all. Every experience I've had before you was meaningless. They were empty physical acts without love, without connection. With you, I want it to mean something. I want our first time together to be the beginning of our forever, not just another night. You're serious about this?" "Completely serious. We'll wait until we're married. We'll do this the right way, your way, because it's the right way." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she threw herself into his arms. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "I'm the lucky one," he whispered into her hair. Holding her tight, they walked back to the house hand in hand, both feeling a sense of peace about their decision. That night, they slept in separate rooms, respecting the boundaries they had set. It was difficult knowing they were under the same roof, but it also felt right. The next morning, Julian woke Sophia early. "Put on something comfortable. We're going on an adventure." They spent the day exploring the coastline, hiking trails that led to hidden coves and eating ice cream in a small beach town. They talked about their future, about the life they wanted to build together. Julian spoke about wanting children someday, and Sophia shared her dream of starting a nonprofit for underprivileged youth. As evening approached, Julian led her back to the beach near their rental house. Sophia noticed something different. There were candles arranged in the sand, forming a path that led to a beautifully decorated area with white fabric billowing in the breeze. Rose petals were scattered everywhere, and soft music played from hidden speakers. "Julian, what is all this?" He turned to her, his eyes shining with emotion. "Sophia Carter, from the moment I heard you talking about your values and your dreams, I knew you were extraordinary. Getting to know you these past months has only confirmed what my heart already knew. You're intelligent, compassionate, strong, and beautiful inside and out. You challenge me to be better, to do better, to live with integrity and purpose." He dropped to one knee in the sand, pulling out a velvet box. Sophia's hands flew to her mouth as tears began streaming down her face. I don't want to spend another day of my life without you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build a family with you, chase dreams with you, grow old with you. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the sunset light. Sophia Carter, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my forever? Yes, she sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as the sun set behind them. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. I can't believe this is real, Sophia whispered, looking at the ring on her finger. Believe it. You're going to be my wife? They spent the rest of the evening on the beach, making plans for their future. Julian wanted to get married within 6 months, and Sophia agreed. They would have a medium-sized wedding, intimate enough to feel personal, but large enough to include all the people they loved. The engagement period flew by in a whirlwind of wedding planning and happiness. Julian was involved in every decision, from choosing the flowers to tasting cake samples. His mother cried happy tears when they told her the news and immediately began planning a family celebration. Sophia's parents flew in from Pennsylvania, and her father pulled Julian aside for a serious conversation about taking care of his daughter. Julian promised he would cherish her for the rest of his life. Rachel was chosen as maid of honor and took her duties seriously, organizing a beautiful bridal shower and helping Sophia find the perfect wedding dress. It was simple and elegant, with delicate lace and a flowing train that made Sophia feel like a princess. But the months of engagement were not without challenges. The physical temptation remained intense. There were nights when they would kiss, goodnight at her door, and both would have to walk away trembling with unfulfilled desire. There were moments when they questioned their decision to wait, when it seemed impossibly difficult. One particularly hard evening, about a month before the wedding, they were at Julian's apartment watching a movie. The kissing started innocently, but quickly escalated. Julian's hands were under her shirt, her legs wrapped around his waist as they made out on the couch. We should stop, Sophia gasped, but she did not move away. I know, Julian groaned, his lips on her neck. God, Sophia, I want you so badly. Just one more month, she whispered. We can make it one more month. Julian pulled back abruptly, breathing hard. He stood up and walked to the window, putting distance between them. This is torture. Beautiful, incredible torture, but torture nonetheless. Sophia adjusted her clothing and joined him at the window. Do you regret your decision to wait with me? He turned and pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Never. Not for a single second. Yes, it's hard. Yes, I spend every night taking cold showers and thinking about our wedding night, but it's going to make that moment so much more meaningful. We're building something here, Sophia. We're building trust and commitment and a foundation for our marriage that goes beyond physical desire. I love you so much. I love you too. And in 1 month, you'll be my wife, and we'll never have to sleep in separate beds again. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Sophia woke up in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house, surrounded by her bridesmaids. Her mother helped her into her dress, tears streaming down both their faces. You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart, her mother said. Your father and I are so proud of you. At the church, Julian waited at the altar with his best man, trying to calm his nerves. His mother sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The church was decorated with white roses and lilies, exactly as Sophia had wanted. When the music began and the doors opened, revealing Sophia on her father's arm, Julian felt his breath catch in his throat. She was radiant, glowing with happiness. As she walked down the aisle toward him, he knew with absolute certainty that every moment of waiting, every sacrifice, every difficult decision had been worth it. Sophia's father placed her, hand in Julian's, with a warning look that said he better take care of his little girl. Julian nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of the trust being placed in him. The ceremony was beautiful. They had written their own vows, promising to love and cherish each other through all of life's ups and downs. When Julian spoke his vows, his voice thick with emotion. There was not a dry eye in the church. "Sophia, you walked into my life and changed everything. Showed me what real love looks like, what integrity and strength and grace truly mean. You waited for me to become the man worthy of you, and I promised to spend the rest of my life proving that your wait was not in vain. I promised to honor you, respect you, protect you, and love you with everything I am. You are my heart, my home, my forever." Sophia's vows were equally moving. "Julian, you saw me when I felt invisible. You valued my principles when others dismissed them. You loved me not despite my boundaries, but because of them. You taught me that real love is patient, that it respects and cherishes and lifts up. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams, to build a life with you filled with love and laughter and purpose. You are my best friend, my love, my everything." When the minister finally pronounced them husband and wife, Julian kissed Sophia with all the love and passion he had been holding back for months. The church erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was joyful and full of laughter. Julian and Sophia danced their first dance as husband and wife to a song about enduring love. They cut the cake, toasted with champagne, and celebrated surrounded by everyone they loved. As the evening wound down, Julian whispered in Sophia's ear, "Ready to start our honeymoon, Mrs. Hawthorne?" She smiled up at him, her heart full. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." They had rented a private villa in the Caribbean for 2 weeks, a place where they could finally be alone together as husband and wife. Flight felt impossibly long, both of them acutely aware that the waiting was finally over. When they arrived at the villa, Julian carried Sophia over the threshold, both of them laughing. He set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Sophia Hawthorne." "I love you too, Julian. Thank you for waiting for me, for us. Thank you for being worth waiting for." Their wedding night was everything they had hoped it would be and more. It was tender and passionate, awkward at moments, but perfect in its imperfection. Julian was patient and gentle, guiding Sophia through her first experience with love and care. They took their time, exploring and learning each other, building intimacy that went beyond the physical. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the windows, completely at peace. "Was it worth the wait?" Julian asked softly, running his fingers through her hair. Sophia looked up at him with tears of joy in her eyes. Every single moment of waiting led to this. It was absolutely worth it. The next 2 weeks were blissful. They barely left the villa, spending their days making love, talking for hours, swimming in the private pool, and planning their future together. They talked about the house they would buy, the children they would have, the life they would build. When they returned home as Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, they moved into a beautiful house that Julian had purchased as a surprise. It had enough bedrooms for the family they planned to have, a large backyard, and an office where Sophia could work on her nonprofit dreams. 3 months after the wedding, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. Julian cried when she told him, holding her close and thanking her for giving him the greatest gift. Their daughter Grace was born 9 months later, with her mother's brown eyes and her father's smile. 2 years after that, they welcomed twin boys, Noah and Ethan, who kept them busy and exhausted and happier than they had ever imagined possible. Sophia successfully launched her nonprofit, which provided educational opportunities and mentorship for underprivileged youth. Julian expanded his business, but made sure to always put family first, never missing a school play or bedtime story. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they sat on their back porch watching their children play in the yard. Julian pulled Sophia close, kissing her temple. "Do you ever regret waiting?" he asked, a question they returned to occasionally over the years. Sophia shook her head firmly. Waiting taught us patience. 8. It taught us that love is about more than physical desire. It gave us a foundation built on respect and commitment. And it made our wedding night, and every night since, more meaningful because we chose each other completely. "I'm grateful every day that the video call didn't disconnect properly that night," Julian admitted with a smile. "I'm grateful you had the integrity to respect my choices even when it was difficult. I would wait 1,000 lifetimes for you, Sophia. Lucky for you, we have this lifetime together, and that's all we need." As the sun set over their beautiful life, their children's laughter filling the air. Julian and Sophia knew they had found something rare and precious. They had found true love, the kind that waits, that respects, that cherishes. The kind of love that lasts forever, and they lived happily ever after, proving that some things in life are absolutely worth waiting for. Thank you for taking that time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more and meaningful stories.